Hello and welcome to our report card for the Tour Dynam-X. If you haven't seen one of these before, basically what I do is go back and revisit a ball that's been out for a few months to check in, see how popular it's been, see if I got it right in the review, and report on how much we've used it and what it's best at. Also, since it is a report card, I will actually be giving out grades, or rating rather, using the new Kool-Aid meter. The staffers always robe up and pass the cups out for every new release, but are they still drinking it a few months down the road? We're on the Kegel Chromium lane condition as usual. It's challenge pattern at just under a 7-to-1 ratio. 42 feet long, 25.5 mils. That puts it on the heavy side of medium for both volume and length. It's not as easy as a house shot, but not as punishing as a sport pattern. Big shout out and thanks as always to Royal Crest Lanes for getting it set up for us. All it takes is a text and we have everything we need. To get started here, Angel's layout is her standard 4 5/8 by 3.5 by 2.5. This is the same layout she uses on everything, plus we also took her ball down to 1000 grit with Jayhawk Bowling Supply's Diamond Dust pads on a resurfacing machine before finishing with Storm's React-A-Scuff to get it up to a 3000-ish grit sheen. Angel's our control tester because her game represents the medium speed, medium rev, average league bowler, and every ball she drills gets the same layout and starts with the same surface prep to establish a basis for comparison. The Tour Dynam-X features the Rondure Tour core, same core shape but significantly different numbers from the original Rondure core in the Rubicon series. That comes in at a 247 RG, 026 differential, and an 010 int diff or PSA strength in 15 pounds, which makes it basically a mild ASIM IQ Tour. They won't say this in as many words either, but it's basically an Obsession Tour or Envy Tour type idea. Super low RG, very low differential, and medium asymmetry, plus the Tour Tracks cover, which they say is based on the VTC formula from the Hypes and the Hustles, and I definitely agree it's in that strength zone. I think VTC is one of the best covers on the market, and thought initially that it was a great choice to modify it for this ball given the reaction they were targeting. In Angel's case, I agreed pretty well 100% with what I said in the review, so we're just going to run that back because there's no point in rewording it. First and most important, this is a very IQ Tour type of idea. This is meant for control. It's not quite enough on the fresh on this pattern for Angel, but once she makes the adjustment, she starts throwing darts. The overall shape is very familiar to the Rubicon and the Hype Solid. A little less ball than the Rubicon, but with the core being the same shape, the shape similarity makes sense. And then with the cover being similar to VTC, the Hype Solid familiarity also makes sense. It's also a perfect ball down from the clone. Once that ball becomes too much, it's a nice drop down into the TDX. And once Angel gets comfortable, it's an easy walk down the side, and it's basically impossible for her to miss the pocket with. Naturally, there will be the flat corner here and there. It's designed to be rolly and controllable, but the little bit of asymmetry tweaks it just enough to get 10 more often than an IQ Tour. She has an obscene amount of miss room left and a surprising amount of miss room right. I mentioned with the Zen Gold label that Global could just discontinue the Zen, and I feel the same way about the IQ Tour now with the TDX in existence. There's nothing the IQ TS does that the TDX can't do better. I always tell people that better is relative, but the TDX is a refined IQ Tour point blank. To now add in the experience since the review, Angel has actually used her TDX more than her IQ Tour. The difference in the shape makes the IQ Tour a little better at carrying the half pocket hits, but half pocket hits with the IQ Tour are flush hits with the TDX, so it pretty well offsets. She's used it pretty heavily in tournaments, but it's actually been really effective in League 2 as a Game 3 ball in our Scratch League where rev rates tear up the shot faster. It's been really effective for her, and due to the way she rotates through stuff regularly, she finds very few balls that she would stash or wants to drill more of, because there's always going to be something new to replace a ball one way or another. This is actually a stasher for her though. IQs and Hustles have been mainstays in her bags, but the tweak with the small amount of asymmetry creates a slight but effective and unique twist on that same general reaction. Flipping sides, my layout is my typical ASIM layout of 4 3/4 by 3.5 by 3.5. The pin's in the ring finger for reference, and typically I like to start with everything shiny because everything hooks with surface on it, and while weaker balls get significantly weaker with shine, stronger balls will retain most of their strength. However, the whole point of this ball is to be a mildly asymmetric IQ. This isn't really a shine it up and throw it in league ball. This was mostly designed for tournaments. And if it works in league, cool. If you throw an IQ in league, this one will work right with it. But this is a ball that people are going to get with intent to use it on tougher stuff. So instead of shining it up and then hitting it with a pad later, I did still take it down to 1000 grit first, but then finished it back to the box surface of 2000 to give it a deeper, truer surface so that we could get right to the point. I'm going to have to somewhat disagree with my comments in the review, or at least add some additional context and experience here, because there are some lefty-specific issues that I don't think apply to righties. With fresh surface, I agree with everything I said. The problem is that the traction drops off significantly as it shines. The fresh surface lasts for a couple games maybe, and after that it kind of turns into a marble. This isn't that big of an issue in League, it really just requires a ball change, and if you had enough surface on it to start and dried up the track enough, it may still work just fine, but there's no reason to beat the track up any faster than you have to on the left side. There's plenty of other options to score all night without worrying about sucking oil off the lane so that the ball will hook the last game. The bigger issue is in tournaments, and especially in sweepers or PBA competition where you're moving pairs every game. You'll be fine for a couple games, but you'll either have to carry around a couple bags full of just 1000 grit TDXs, or just change balls, at which point there's not much of a point. Once you find a shot lefty, the idea is pretty much camp out and try to do that the rest of the day, because aside from lane-to-lane differences requiring a small adjustment one way or the other, if you find the look, it's going to be the look. The cover traction is low enough that it's really dependent on surface to do what it does, and once the surface goes away, so does its effectiveness. However, the IQ Tour doesn't lose as much because the cover's a little stronger, so I think the issue here is that they just didn't go with a strong enough cover to really maximize the potential of the idea for this ball. This isn't as big of a deal on the right side because the track friction helps out a bunch. A lane-shined TDX thrown on the right versus the left look very different, but they're pretty similar with surface. This ball just needs too much friction to really make it competition for something like an Obsession Tour or an Envy Tour. The one thing I'll say though is that it's very good on higher friction lane surfaces. I actually did really well at a tournament in a place I historically struggle at because of how much the fronts hook. I was able to just zip it down the rail without having it read too early, and this ball will absolutely make that trip every year now, in addition to still going to tournaments locally where there's higher friction. In the end, it's not remotely close to working for the original intent, but it fills another gap or solves an issue in a different direction, so while I'll back off on saying that it replaces the IQ Tour completely for lefties, I still feel that way for righties, and I'll just adjust my opinion for the lefties. If you have angle issues on higher friction surfaces, the TDX with lane shine is a GOAT. It's a unique and isolated reaction that I haven't been able to get out of anything else. If it does still serve a purpose for you on tougher stuff, cool. I've actually had it come into play a couple times when it was usable shiny. It just is kind of relegated to the rail, and the only reason I'd ever add surface to it again is just to freshen the cover up. Because again, however good it is, the reaction dull doesn't last long enough to be effective or relevant, but it's really good pointing it off the ditch with some lane shine. For Angel, it's a 9, near perfect. It's just not quite strong enough to see as much use as she would like it to. It's a ball or two down from other stuff, and it's really effective when she can use it, just the lack of strength relegates it to more of a supporting role. Generally, again, for righties, I still think it's great, and specifically because it doesn't really compete directly with an Envy Tour, for example. It's a step down from something like that, and this is the only ball on the market that's in that space, in my opinion. For me, it's a 7. It's good when it's good, it's just a lot more niche than I expected, which really limits its window of usage. It does, however, have a very defined and specific purpose, and that's actually a big positive because it limits the guesswork or any kind of debate over what the move is. If the lane surface is higher friction and I have the rail, the TDX is going to be the ball, period. So it's definitely nice to have that kind of clarity when it comes to ball choice, instead of being stuck flipping through a half a dozen options that could be in play. I, of course, have a review up for the Tour Dynam-X covering it from several different angles, plus a handful of comparison videos if you want to check those out. Down in the description is a link to Bowler's Mart that will get one ordered for you. I am obligated by the YouTube overlords to note that I do receive a 5% commission on all sales through the link. Also, of course, don't forget my code ROSEDAL10 to get 10% off your order at checkout at CoolWick. Thanks for watching, and may the strikes be with you.